Okay, folks, in case you've been wondering where I've been, this is the first video of mine you've watched and tried to watch in 3 weeks or something, and you wonder where I've been, because there isn't much. Quick version, tornado hit my town. I don't exactly have internet access right now, except at my gym. So, in an effort to make uploading these as quickly and painlessly as possible at my gym, I'm not on camera. I'm just going to do this the old-fashioned 2008 YouTube way of pictures behind what I'm talking about here. Back to our regularly formatted programming here in a few days. Anyway, I received an email from a viewer that I thought I would share, and they gave me permission to, as long as I keep them anonymous. And they are expressing doubts about the carnivore diet after having done it for a long time. Apparently, they ran into some trouble, and I'm going to give my thoughts on and my sort of response here, but I'm also going to invite you to give some responses to this too, and not just, oh, you suck, stop, being weak, just suck it up and keep going, but an actual, reasoned response. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is probably the most reasonable response I've seen to a carnivore diet, like a negative point about a carnivore diet that I've seen in a while. Most people say, well, you need fiber because fiber has required nutrients in it, or, all the other silly stuff we're used to. But this is a little bit different. So I'm going to just let them voice what they have to say, and by just reading you their email. And then I'm going to just give myself, a few minutes to respond. But I'd like to see what you have to say in the comments. So please let me know. Anthony, I've been watching your channel for a while now. You might be my favorite of the carnivore channels. Aw, shucks, thank you. Because you aren't afraid of slaying a few sacred cows. Maybe you can give me an answer to a question that will determine if I stay carnivore or try something else instead. You often criticize people who say that carnivore isn't a sustainable diet. By sustainable, I mean that you can stay on it pretty much forever. Here's what happened to me. I fell off the wagon very hard. Life circumstances happened, and I found myself eating way too much stuff that wasn't on plan. It started out as a few things not carnivore, but not something most of us would think was really bad. A little fruit, nuts, that kind of thing. But it quickly snowballed into donuts and other stuff. The sugar got a hold of me. The cells of my body almost felt like they were on fire with a need for sugar. I had been carnivore for a few years at this point. The point I'm trying to make is this. Carnivore isn't a sustainable diet because it isn't anti-fragile. Before I did carnivore, I did keto, like you, and I quit keto for carnivore because many of the same reasons you did. All that fake keto junk food made things harder. But when I'd fall off the diet on keto into old bad habits coming back again, I could more easily get back on the keto path with less damage than I did with carnivore. Not only did the various ills I had been fighting with carnivore come back with a vengeance when I fell off the wagon, I also gained an astronomical amount of weight in a short period of time, all of it body fat. That wasn't a problem for me on keto. I almost think carnivore damaged my metabolism instead of healing it. What do you think? How would you respond? Okay, well, the first thing I'd say is there's some information missing here. What caused you to fall off the wagon? Was it just a moment of weakness after a few years on carnivore? Did you accidentally ingest something that you thought was sugar-free and playing fast and loose with the rules, but actually had some sugar into it? That happened to me once. That was not a fun time because of the consequences of it. Were you dealing with some astronomical amounts of stress? That's what fueled my weight gain this year, was ridiculous stress. We had a new baby coming, economic downturn, all the things that come with having a new child. I joke that, my wife may have been the one pregnant, but I'm the one who gained the weight because once you factor out the necessary body fluids that her body produced to support the child's weight, and the other things that are just fleeting weight gain that pass after the child is born, my wife gained like 5 or 6 pounds. It was something ridiculously low like that. I gained much more than that. And, I had a very stressful year, and then you had this, tornado thing. So there's a lot of details missing here, but you're not the first person I've heard talk about this. That when they fell off the wagon on carnivore and ate something they shouldn't have eaten, Maybe they tried Dr. Saladino's, animal-based version, his animal-based paleo that he still calls carnivore for some reason, where, people eating honey and fruit and things. Then they tried that. It was just a catastrophe for their diet. They started eating, the sugar cravings got a hold of them very quickly, much worse than when they had been on keto. And I've never seen anybody address an increase in your response sensitivity to sugar. I've never seen it. It reminds me, when I see people talk about this, it reminds me of watching people who gave up tobacco products and their temptation they felt, or after how they started up again after years of being away from it. I think it's a valid concern, and I'd like to see some of the knowledgeable leaders in the community explain this, because, the person who sent me this email, they use the term here that I haven't defined yet, and it's anti-fragile. I'm used to seeing that mostly in policy discussions. I've also seen it in a few other places. But basically, it's what it sounds like. Anti-fragile means it's robust. It stands up to, an impact. It's not prone to breaking by accident. An anti-fragile economy, for instance, can withstand, sudden downturn in oil production for a time, or an anti-fragile economy is not going to have supply chain issues like we did just a few years ago and still do as a consequence, although not as much. And calling a carnivore diet not anti-fragile is something that I think is very interesting, because I've never seen somebody do that before. And I know there would be some who would disagree. I think it goes down to a case-by-case basis. So, for instance, I've seen Dr. Sean Baker speak about how once or twice a year he'll have a piece of cake at a birthday party. I'm sure, and then he joked about how you can take his carnivore card away or at that point or something. But this is a while ago that I saw that, back when he was putting out like 5 short videos a day. He doesn't have that problem, obviously. He can have that and then go right back to his, I think I saw him eating a tri-tip the other day on Instagram. But I know if I did that, it would be a disaster. I just know it would be a disaster. And I think here at the crux of what you're saying is that you do not believe a carnivore diet is sustainable, because it's one slip up for a lot of people can cause a major problem. And this seems to be true. I've seen this in the spaces, in various social media spaces, where people said they screwed up and now they can't get back on the wagon. That it feels like a controlled substance that they're dealing with. There are those books about sugar being addictive from several years ago. I can't remember the doctor's name who wrote them. I actually have one. I just don't know where it is. Let me know in the comments if you know who I'm talking about, please. But everything's been very upended on my end since the storm. But I think when you deal with carnivore, you should understand something here. This is not like other diets. Cheat days, cheat meals are not a good idea on this way of eating, as people like to say. A term I've never liked using, but there's a truth to it being to the use of that term, way of eating. And the truth about it is that this is not a temporary thing. There are some who want to try carnivore for whatever reason as a temporary thing. I once did a radio show with somebody who wanted to, who shared my religious convictions, and they wanted, have conversations about it briefly. We talked about other things, but they were talking about how they miss salads, and they were looking forward to going back once they lose the weight. Now, I know your response as audience members will be to say, well, carnivore is not a weight loss diet, and that is true. In fact, this is something I'm running into myself as I gained a lot of stress-induced weight this year, and I'm having to wrestle with whether if I just do a keto-themed carnivore diet, which is essentially this much protein and this much fat every day, rinse, repeat every single day till I lose the weight, or if I should go back to like ketovore or something, because I'm 43 years old and I can't carry the kind of weight that I'm carrying right now as a consequence of this ridiculous amount of stress. And this is why I found this email compelling, because I don't see too many people talk about what happens if you fail, and there's almost like an ostracization that goes on. This is why I saw somebody once in one of my comments saying, forget your concept of a carnivore tribe. Don't give me that stuff. That's, not real. And I think, sadly, it's true. There isn't really a carnivore tribe. There's no sense of community in the carnivore spaces. There just isn't. I don't know why that is. It's not the place for me to opine about it right now. Maybe a future video or something. But this core of this problem is carnivore and anti-fragile diet. And I'm going to tell you right now about what happened to me when I went to Tulsa. So the day the tornado hit, the morning after the tornado hit, I was using some resources I had to find access to a hotel in Tulsa, which is 90 miles from me. And the reason is I have an autistic 4.5-year-old son and 2 other small children, and there was no power, which means no AC. Also means no internet, and it also means no way to keep my kids entertained. My 4-year-old son doesn't do well with what we'll call change. And going to a hotel room would constitute less change because it's like being on an adventure. That's easier to sell to him than him being at home without any of his normal things around to be able to use, even though they're right there. How do you explain, I'm sorry, but we can't watch your movies that are online because because the internet is broken, to an autistic, nonverbal 4-year-old? Good luck. So, plus my wife doesn't like staying inside the house all day, every day, and a few other things. So we decided to get out of town and get out of everybody's way. And I'll talk about this more in a video here in a few days if I can put one together. I had already been on my carnivore reset and it was going perfectly. It was perfectly going. I was really optimistic about, getting the dairy and other things that had been causing me problems out. And the storm of the century hits my town and I have to live out of a hotel room, and I pay extra for a hotel room with a stove, and that stove turned out to be a glorified hot plate. Bought a couple steaks up there, a little cheap skillet, and I could barely cook anything in there. And every time I'd go, take my kids to Brahms, if you're familiar with Brahms. It's a picture of Baskin Robbins meets a Burger King meets the produce section of a grocery store with a meat department. I mean, they're weird little fast food restaurants, but they sell their own steaks, which is cool. So, but every time I would take them to a Brahms or any place really, and I would order just hamburger patties, I would inevitably get a keto burger. American cheese slices, lettuce, tomato, pickle, onions. You get the idea. And I'm not the kind who likes to fight it, especially when it becomes a consistent problem. So I ended up ingesting the dairy and had all the problems that came with it and probably gained more stress-related weight over this thing. I have been afraid to get on the scale since all this came down. But I'm back home and, just eating meat of various kinds, coffee, and that's it. And my point is, I am inclined to agree that carnivore is not anti-fragile. Oh, sure, if I had done my due diligence, made pemmican, as I saw some comments, had, enough Carnivore Crisps on hand to eat nothing but Carnivore Crisps for a week, I could have done it. But I didn't have any of that stuff. I didn't have any of that, not in sufficient amounts. And it doesn't matter how good some of your shelf-stable survival food is, you get tired of it real quick. So I don't have a good response to the anti-fragile statement. Other than under normal circumstances, which there are plenty of people who go their whole lives without any of these kind of events happening to them, you should be able to stay on. But is that also realistic? And I ask this as a very real question. There are people who have lost friendships because they refuse to have the birthday cake at a party, or because they've had, they can't do public get-togethers with friends anymore and be the person sitting there eating strips of bacon at the, at the bar while their friends are eating, whatever it is. So food is a central part of our social experience as human beings. And this diet is almost antisocial because it upends all of that. You can't really do those things anymore, not easily. I know some will disagree. Again, just eat wings at the bar. Well, most wings are fried in seed oils. Wings at most places are fried in seed oils and dusted with cornstarch. That's why I don't do wings at most places unless I know where they came from. My body gets weird reactions if I eat certain wings from certain places. Now, it's not even mentioning the places that bred their wings for some reason. If you're breading your chicken wings, go home. Give up. You make something else. You don't know what you're doing, because chicken wings, when you deep fry them in tallow, are not hard to get crispy. But I would tell you that under normal circumstances, most people can keep this going. And it really comes down to, are you willing to pay the cost? If not, I have nothing against a ketogenic diet. I would suggest you go on the low oxalate end of the ketogenic diet. Keep the nuts to a minimum. Also do low fiber, because we know everything we know about oxalates and fiber tells us those should be kept to minimum. You should not have those, and ingest them if you can. Like, if you're going to eat nuts, eat peely nuts. They have like 1 carb for a serving. If you're going to do keto with plants of some kind, berries, right? A small amount of berries, if you can handle that without, again, that sugar problem. But I don't have a good answer for you. And this is why I'm bringing this to what community this is, such as it is. Because this is a person who had been carnivore for a few years. They didn't say how long, but a few is at least 2, 3, maybe. There are, the big name carnivore influencers were here on YouTube with very tiny audiences for a while before something changed. Going back to 2012 in some cases, 2013. And they found that whatever it was, they ingested some, they played around at the edges for whatever reason, had a little bit of sugar, and it turned into a whole heck of a lot of sugar. And they gained a bunch of body weight on top of whatever metabolic issues they were dealing with getting worse. And it makes you, and I do wonder, because some have hinted in the past that carnivore is not going to cure your need, quote unquote, for sugar. That it in some ways may make it worse. And I'm wondering if this person experienced that. I'm wondering if other of you listening to this right now have had that happen to you as well. Did you find you had more sugar? Or if you had sugar, even after years, it was like, maybe it didn't taste as good as you remember because you knew carnivore long enough. Everybody admits your taste buds change. After a while, bacon starts tasting sweet. The fat on your ribeye starts tasting sweet to some people. But everybody admits that your taste buds might change, but you still accidentally ingested some sugar, or you decided to be nice and have the piece of homemade holiday treat at a holiday party, and there was it was much worse than any time in your pre-carnivore past. I'm curious, what advice would you give to this person? Because the accusation that carnivore is not an anti-fragile diet is one I have not seen made before. And in this way, that keto, I can tell you from personal experience, I've tried keto off and on for years. And most of the time, if I was silly and ate something I shouldn't, I'd get a stomach ache or something, and then I'd be back on plan the next day or the day after. And if this person went for several days or whatever it was, because they couldn't stop themselves, that's something different. Maybe Dr. Sideways and his emotional eating talks should come into the play here for this person. I don't know. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. And, be nice and try to help this person out a little bit, because they probably need it. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media can help too. Anyway, I'm Anthony Stine, Practical Carnivore without internet, which is why I'm not on camera right now. Thanks for your time today.